Matt, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the Working Dads podcast. If you could just give us a brief explanation of who the heck are you?
Happy to. Thanks for having me here. Should be a fun conversation. So I'm husband and father to two boys. They are now. I got to do the math for a second.
Yeah,
24 and 32.
nice.
And so I navigated the first phase of my career while being a young father to young kids, which was kind of a trip. I also happen to be CEO of a company called Hunter, which is if you've ever tried to build a business or been into software where you had to do sales and marketing. Hunter is a 10-year-old company that's bootstrapped and profitable and is really focused on helping small businesses grow. And so it's 100% software focused on lead gen and outreach. But that's how I spend most of my day hours. I try to do other things with the rest of the hours that I can to, be happy or do something fun and entertain my family.
At the age groups that they're in, they're pretty much self-automated at that point. They can wipe their own butt. And if they can't, that's another problem, I would assume, that they need to manage themselves. But I mean, I guess like it seems like you look, I don't know how old you are, you seem young. And so like, what was that like? Like how, if you don't mind sharing, like how young were you when you actually first started having children? And then, 10 years old. So you were probably doing something much like you found this company while they're in their 20s or teens. So, I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's honestly it's even a little bit more challenging than that sounds. So when I met my wife, so we got married in 2000. So yes, I'm ancient. Um, we got married in 2000, and when we met, our oldest was 4. So I sort of went, I'm in the beginning, my early 20s, kind of building my career, trying to figure out who I am and what I'm going to do, while also being a father to, I went from a bachelor to a father of a 4-year-old in a very, very short window of time. And that was really interesting. I mean, it was really hard and really challenging. I'm a weirdo, so I guess that worked okay for me because it wasn't like I was missing anything that I thought was I wasn't real big in terms of partying or dating. It wasn't for me, it was just, it felt natural when I found the person I wanted to be with, and I got a chance to meet her child. Like, I'm a big kid. Like, I like playing. like I felt like, yeah, this is great. I'll just have somebody to play with, and yeah, I'll just make sure he likes Star Wars, and everything will be fine. And that's almost sort of naively how I went into it. But no, it was challenging because, like, also we met in San Francisco, and this was pre-dot-com. And so, I mean, it was still an incredibly expensive city, especially for two young people trying to figure out the early part of their career. And so, like, we relocated back to my hometown in Kansas. And, so there's a culture shock. For me, too, by the way. I was real happy to leave. So going back was like a culture shock because I was like, I thought I solved this problem. But we ended up, the reason was it's like dirt cheap to live there. I went to the universities. I know the schools were good. And so I was like, look, this is great. We'll figure it out. My family's there, so this will be a lot easier.
But she's
And then I
originally
got,
from there as well.
I'm sorry?
She's originally from San Francisco.
Yes, well, Southern Cal, but yeah, we met there. And then, yeah, and then it was just trying to figure that out. I got into a tech startup not too many years later. So, we all together sort of braved the dot-com bubble bursting, and sort of dealt with that fallout for a couple of years, which with a young child was really challenging. We came out of that though, and ended up. We had our second child in, what was it, 2001 to 2002, and so we then had an infant, and then I get into a tech startup about a year later, which was what I ultimately wanted to do. So it's not like that was necessarily new, but it just meant career changes. We relocated. We were dealing with culture changes from what we had expected to be spending our time in and around. Then, of course, there's the fact that my family was present all the time, not in a negative way, but like, still for all of us, it's, we went from young kids living in the city to this like kind of intense family environment. And so it was it was a lot of shocks to the system. It was like, I think, and then we bought a house. It was like literally like every major thing that you can do to create stress for yourself. I think we tried to do all of them in like a 2 to 3 year period.
And you
It
might as
was
well do
nuts.
it. When you're gonna rip the Band-Aid off, you might as well just like rip it completely as fast as possible and do it as quickly as possible. So that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And then trying to navigate. Look, I had it really not too hard. I lived fairly close to work in a city where at worst I was going to have to drive 25 minutes. So like even in the worst case situation with traffic, it's 20 to 25 minutes. If I was in Boston or San Francisco trying to do that, where commuting is going to be 45 minutes to an hour and a half no matter what, that's a completely different story. So I had it pretty blessed being in a smaller town that gave us a lot of flexibility to have more time at home. But then I was wrestling with the same thing that I think all of us wrestle with, which is like, how do I make sure I'm successful at my job and can give that an intense amount of energy, especially in a competitive field and especially in a burgeoning industry where there's so much pressure and excitement, while then also still somehow trying to represent myself in a family unit, which I think anybody who's done it, you've done it, we've done it. It's what do you say? It's like the idea of work life balance is it's a it's a set of compromises and sacrifices, and you just have to try to figure out which things you can give up because
Yeah.
you can't do it all. You
Yeah.
just can't.
What if you can remember back in the beginning, like what did you end up feeling that you had to give up? Like because I know while you think about that question, I'll kind of like there's only so many hours in a day, and we have the fortunate aspects of having like a nanny here that can help us, and but leaves at a specific time, and then within that time frame, like I could be in mid thought, and then that mid thought has to wait 6 hours or 4 hours in order for me to go back to my computer. Like what were some of the things that you in the beginning of your career, and I'll ask you about the hunter stuff as well, because I'm sure it's a completely different answer, but in the very beginnings of your career, what do you feel like you gave up during that time? And was there like blocks that you had that you were working within, or did you ultimately have to come home and then boom, you're in dad mode? Like what was that process like for you?
First off, I think I was really bad at this. So let me also preface it by saying I don't think this is advice unless you're
I
willing to
also want
listen
to
to it.
state everybody says that, so that's
Yeah, okay,
okay.
okay. Fair
We
enough.
all suck ass at this.
I I was giving up personal things. I mean, first and foremost, right? The other thing I gave up on was sleep.
Mm,
Luckily I was young and in my 20s, so like while everybody else is out using their not needing as much sleep to carouse and do uh, what they would call fun things, I was using that to essentially frame my day like this. I would go to work in the morning, would work intensely all day. This was pre-remote work, and so everybody went to the office, would come home, would have dinner, would hang out with the kids, would help with homework or whatever needed to be done. Often would end up playing video games with them a bit or doing whatever because they both really gravitated towards video games and I loved it at the time. This was before they started beating me really handily at any game, and then suddenly, by the way, video games stopped being as much fun for me. But would spend some hours with them. They would go to bed, and then I would generally use my evening to night hours to do more exploration. So like I would often start startups on the side as side projects before that was really popular, simply to learn. I was doing a work that I really enjoyed. I was doing a job that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to learn more faster. And so I was like mainlining startup life with every hour of my day that I could to try to make sure I could figure out how to be good at it or how to be great
mm,
at it. And so, yeah, what I sacrificed was friendships, sleep, personal things, things like I grew up as an artist. I painted, took photography fairly seriously when I was in school. And like a lot of that just went by the wayside for many, many years. I would say I suspended that for a very long time.
yeah. Do you regret that? Looking back now, because I mean, Hunter, in my opinion, is one of the coolest, best companies in the business space. Like if you don't have a company like Hunter in your back pocket as a business owner, what the hell are you doing? Like to me, it's inevitable. Like you need a service like yours. So like
Thanks
obviously
for the
now
plug.
you paid me how much? No. Um I genuinely believe that. Like, full stop. Like, I genuinely believe that. And I've been a fan of the company for years before even meeting you. To be able to meet you, to be able to talk to you, to be able to know how cool you are and use the product, like it's amazing. And I'll support Hunter for as long as we can. With
Thanks.
that said, looking back, Hunter being successful, it's a little bit easier to say like, no, I don't regret anything because it's successful. But I'm sure there's at least some type of regrets or changes that you would have made. And if you did, if you could, is there something in particular that comes to mind outside of like that time that you're talking about?
I made a conscious decision pretty early. Like it was pretty obvious to me. Like if I wanted to maximize my career success, there were certain things that I could do. They would take me away from my family. They would maybe force us to relocate before we were ready. It more than anything, it just increases the risk profile of our life, right? At a time when we were trying to establish it, when we were trying to make it work in the first place. And so it did not feel like a time where expanding our risk was the right idea.
Hmm.
In hindsight, that's what I would have changed.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I would have taken way more risks, even with kids, because it's so much easier to bounce back from those things in your 20s. There's a lot more individual contributor roles than there are executive roles. And so I made a deliberate choice to get the most I could out of my career, but not overly sacrificing everything. I don't know, maybe it's arrogance. I thought it was possible to do something that people say isn't possible. It's possible I didn't spend enough time at home. Like it's like I'm sure there are lots of things that are true that about that sacrifice and about that trade-off, but I really I like work. I enjoy building things. I find that incredibly stimulating, and especially when that thing that I'm building creates value for other people. That's extremely rewarding. And so as a creative person, I channeled all of that creativity towards work, and that was really rewarding. And instead of doing what I think some people do, look, if you're in New York or you're in San Francisco or you're in Boston and you're early in your career, you should go all in. I was a dad at that time, and so I couldn't in the same way. I wouldn't change being a dad. I wouldn't change getting married. I wouldn't change having a family life. Um, but I would certainly try to spend as much time optimizing my focus on my career as I could in the early days. And I think I did a decent job of that while still having a family life. Not perfect by any means, but I learned a lot really fast.
Yeah. You said you had multiple businesses. Like, how did Hunter stick?
So let's talk about this a bit just so you have an understanding of time frame. So the first company was in 2000. That was a company called Bold Chat. I joined when I think I would have been the third person in the office. Did all the sales and marketing, basically anything that required talking to people. That was my job, and anything that was code was the OG founder, his role. And then we had another person who was kind of like business operations, and that was the company. It was just the three of us, and it was an amazing experience. We built that business and then sold it about 8-ish years later to a company called Log Me In, who at the time was, substantial size, publicly traded, and all of that. So my first foray into being a startup, we were bootstrapped. So we weren't spending VC money. We weren't going at VC speeds. We were going at our speeds, and basically our speed was determined by how smart we were. And so that was a lot of fun. Like it was like, and so I would do these side projects more to try to figure out, okay, before I go commit to this at work,
Hmm.
what works? Like, let me spin up this little side project. And like suddenly e-commerce started to get really big in our customer base. So I was like, okay, well, how am I going to build empathy for e-commerce customers? Let me start an e-commerce website and see what that's like. So I would use side projects in ways to supplement my experience or accelerate my experience in ways that I thought would help my job. And luckily, I was young enough to be able to do all of that after hours and not have it too dramatically impede my relationships. I'm sure if you ask my children, they might.
Hmm.
My youngest son likes to joke all the time. His favorite go-to bit is how I was never around him as a kid.
Hmm.
So obviously that's not true, but obviously there's enough there that he knows I'm sensitive about that he likes to razz me about it. So, can't be that there's zero data there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would do side projects, and then we kept working on that business, and I kept learning and I kept growing, and there was no reason to leave. we sold the business, and then that gave us an opportunity to relocate out to Massachusetts. And so we came, and that was trying, by the way. That was something I probably would reconsider the process by which we did it. I don't think I would change the outcome, but I would change the process. And so we did that at a time when my oldest was right about 18.
Mm-hmm.
So we left. Obviously, he was welcome to come. He chose to stay. And then we then had a family unit in Massachusetts, and we had a family unit in Kansas, but we were kind of apart. He grew up really fast and learned a lot and really matured rapidly in ways that I think we all want to see our kids do. And I don't think it was terribly unhealthy overall, but yeah, he had issues like we all would. And then my youngest was kind of got to be like a weird only child for a little while, which was also strange. And then I was here, and then I did have an hour plus commute, and I did have a serious company that I was a part of, and I was trying to build something within a huge company, and that takes a ton of energy. And like putting all the energy into that I could, but I'm not 20 anymore, and I'm not, so the family dynamic changed, but the work dynamic changed. And so I would come home, and I didn't have the same kind of energy to do side projects at night that I used to. And so I didn't feel like I was learning as quickly. And I felt like I tried to channel more of that trade-off back into family. Mm-hmm. And I think that was, again, it was really conscious at the time, but I felt work took me away so much more that I didn't have the extra bandwidth to play with. And so I ended up taking what bandwidth I did have and really trying to channel that as much as possible into family, which, is a challenge in itself because a family unit gets used to a certain rhythm. Yep. And if the pieces change and the rhythm changes, then it's kind of disruptive for everybody. But yeah, it was really tough.
And you did it all at night?
I did. Well, yeah, I mean, I had to. He was in school during the day, and then I'd come back. It was normal business. So you're working till 6, and then you get an hour plus drive home. So you don't even get home till dinner.
So probably went to bed around like 9-ish.
Yeah.
And then from 9 to, whatever you wanted to stay up and do your thing, like that's when you would work on the business.
Actually, that's when I would sacrifice the most. Because at that stage of my career, I was doing a ton of it during the day, but I just didn't have the energy to put into it at night. And so it was really much closer to a balance, but I would still say it was like 2/3 work and 1/3 family. But then within a couple of years, I had the notion that I needed to start another company, had an idea that I thought was very big and needed to raise money for that. And so in the midst of all of that, I then went and basically stopped working, stopped making tons of money, and lived off of our savings for almost a year trying to build this business and raise money. And yeah, so it's like, I feel like if you go back and look at it, it's like a bunch of conscious decisions, each with their own set of unique challenges. And the family dynamic was almost different at every stage. Yeah. And so you didn't get a lot of compounding benefits of decisions. It was like, okay, well, here's an entirely new 3-year period to think about and try to get the most out of it.
Did you collaborate with your wife at the time to be able to say like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is the route we want to go? Or was it just like, hey, you have the keys and take the wheel and take us to the promised land type of situation?
No, we didn't manage that part well.
I appreciate you being vulnerable about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. We were both dealing with those things for the first time in our lives, and I did not come from a family that was highly entrepreneurial, and so it's not like I had a lot of data points to look at. I didn't grow up around that, and so it was all new signal in my life, and so trying to do that in a new city, trying to raise money for the first time, doing all, like, I was probably working nonstop. Like I probably went from a 2/3, 1/3 balance to something that was probably far closer to like a 3/4 to 7/8. Like, it wasn't super healthy, but candidly, if you're going to do that, and that's kind of the trade-off, you have to know if you're going to start a business and you really want it to be successful, and the bigger the idea, the bigger the commitment. I don't think you can be successful and have what people think of as a work-life balance. And so you really have to feel like your family unit is going to support that endeavor, or it will tear you all apart. I mean, it would. Luckily, my wife saw the opportunity, saw what was developing, saw what I was creating, understood the impact and the importance of it, and saw the opportunity size. And so She never, like, one thing that was great about us is she never pushed back on career endeavors or anything that would help me learn or advance, not just advance earning potential, but just advance my ability to do the kinds of things I wanted to do with my life. Like, that was never a friction point, and so that was really amazing.
I was going to ask that, like, how important was it for someone to have 100% confidence and belief in yourself, and did that add more pressure to you to make sure that you did it right?
If she had 100% confidence or belief, I think she had 100% support.
Right.
She supported me 100% and knew that it was just as likely to fail as not, if not more likely to fail. Um, but also didn't question it. Like, at no point did I ever really feel like I had to justify it, even though there were times, if I look back, I really should have.
Yeah. How important is it for people who are listening that maybe are in the process of marrying, or even just on a journey? How important is it to find the right person? Like, how important is your partner to the success of your career? And I think that that word partner can also be expanded to like business partner too.
It's absolutely critical. How to do it is a whole other topic. But look, I don't think this will be controversial to say, if your partner doesn't support what you're doing, either you're going to quit doing it or the relationship will break. Like, it's binary. I've seen families where the partner not only fully supports it, but also fully understands it, fully believes in it. That's a completely different situation. Um, I think in order to be a CEO or in order to be a founder and to be successful, if your partner isn't willing to support that, knowing that that means you're being paid to put your business first, it's an incredible strain on a relationship. And if that person isn't exposed to entrepreneurship and has never seen somebody try to build a company or build a thing, um, I imagine a lot of those relationships don't survive that window. I think there's a lot of data points out there to prove that.
For sure, definitely. Well, I appreciate that. I want to ask a little bit more about the growth of Hunter, and what you learned from the very beginning of like you as a father to time allocation and management, to potentially how you apply that to the growth of the company. Because as we mentioned previously, the percentages, and there's only 24 hours in a day, you have to know when to spend it. So like, what is your time like now, given that they're a little bit older, they're a little slightly removed from your like visual standpoint, maybe not psychological, but definitely, you're not hearing pitter patters, or you're not seeing them run around the house, right? What is it like now that they're removed, and how are you able to allocate time now? Like what are the problems that you're experiencing now if they weren't children previously?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. When they're in the home with you and they're present, that they're kids. They don't care about your job. Like, they just want to see you when they want to see you.
They
They
want to
want to
kick your
be
ass in
there.
Call of Duty.
Yeah, well, yeah, sadly, and every other game, except Street Fighter. None of my kids will play with me on Street Fighter, so
Oh
at
yeah.
least I have that still hanging over me. But nah, like, it's let me think about this. You can edit like all of my hemming and hawing, but luckily, the phase they are in their life is the phase where I, as a dad, am supposed to take a step back in. When they're young and they're in your home, they're constantly present in your mind because they're constantly in front of you, right? They're just around. And so they never leave your thoughts. They never leave your mind. They're very front of mind all the time. But once they start to build their own lives, you really have to allow them the space to do that. And so they're in your mind for different reasons. They occupy potentially the exact same amount of space, but they do it in different ways. It's more, I wonder what's happening here. I wonder how this is going. I hope that they're finding grace in these situations. I hope that these experiences that they have to learn aren't going to hit them too hard when I'm not there to help, even though that's kind of the point. And so instead of, when they're young, them just being omnipresent because they're physically omnipresent, as this in this stage of their lives, they're omnipresent in my mind because of all of the things that I don't know. And it's a really different moment, which has been really interesting to try to deal with and live through.
Have you ever felt like you've been running your family like a business?
No, no. I mean, I know where that question would come from, but no, I think the things that it takes to run a successful business overlap somewhat with what it takes to run a successful household, but I never wanted the business vibe at home. And so I've very intentionally tried to avoid bringing that power dynamic into the house.
Mm. Do you feel like stress from jobs comes into the family life, or are you able
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. No, I'm terrible at managing that. I really care about what I do. I really love what I do. It is really a part of who I am. And I'm not in the like hustle culture obsession way that like, success has to define me. My work has to define me because I spend so much time with it. I want to make sure I'm spending my time on something that I care about. And I've chosen actively throughout my career to do that in ways that have sacrificed financial rewards. So I've always put forward personal reward and family reward and like that opportunity ahead of financial reward because to me that was just always so much more important. I wanted to make sure I was learning the maximum amount that I could from every job and from every stage of my career. And I think that that has actually transferred. So that's one of the things that's kind of interesting. So, both of my children in an indirect way have followed my career path, but in different ways. My oldest is now in tech. Um, Hearing some of the things that he talks about in his organization, it's impossible not to recall stories that I would tell at the kitchen table when he was young. And he works incredibly hard and is just really smart. And it's cool to see him going through that phase of his career and being able to think, gosh, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago I was doing that. And then my youngest followed the more artistic path and is a tattoo artist in New York. And so these are both really significant threads of my life that they've been exposed to. And interestingly, they each chose kind of a different portion of it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I was actually my final question to you was actually going to be, and we could just ask it now, and then I'll follow up with my other final question. Um, what I if you were to ask me this question, I would have a different answer now than I would in 20 something whatever years from now. But like, what would you want if you were to define their success? Like, what would you want their success to be? Um, given at the state that they're in, or at least in the in what you want to see for them in their future, like what is your definition of a success for them? And we can make the conversation, well, the definition of success is based on their definition of success, but like if you were at the end of the day, end of life, and say, man, my kids were successful, why would that be?
That in their life they were doing their best to live the life on their terms. I hope that their lives look exactly the way they want their lives to look. It doesn't need to look even remotely like anything. I'm perfectly fine if both kids are like, yeah, I'm going to do every single thing I ever saw you do the opposite. Fine. If that like leads you to a place that you want to be, then that's great. So far so good, honestly. Like watching both of them do very very different things with their lives, I feel really encouraged that they're on the right track with all of those things.
That's cool. And in my
And
final
also, I'm sorry, before we go,
no, no.
because the other thing, and I think that I really am proud of, is making sure they never felt that taking risks was that scary.
Hmm.
That's one really great benefit of having an entrepreneurial parent as you're growing up, is that it just changes your perspective on the risk envelope of your life. And in order to do anything in our world, you have to be willing to take some risks. And the fact that that has permeated, I think, is probably the thing that makes me the most happy.
Yeah, it's a good friend of mine. We went to before we had children, we went to a playground and we saw this little girl climb from, like, we were just like kind of hanging out. It's not like we're
Yeah.
some freaking weirdos that go to playground.
I knew there was a good
Yeah,
explanation
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
it.
We were just walking around the city. We were just walking around the city, and there's a playground, and we stumbled across it. Anyways, this girl, little girl, comes up and she starts going through, and she's climbing, and the dad's like, "Oh crap! Like this is a problem." So then he immediately goes up and he catches her, but she's still going, right? And I can assure you that if there was an adult version of that at the scale of what an adult would be, I have a very high guess that most adults wouldn't actually climb it because they're afraid of that failure, or they're afraid of that risk. So it's always interesting to hear, that your perspective on that, because I think risk is really important, but I think we get afraid very easily once we fall at least once or twice.
I like, and I really feel like this did come across, but look, unless I'm gonna die, I'd like to try it. And like if there's a way to try really risky things and just kind of stop short of the death threshold, then like let me try it. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a really healthy. I think I handled it in a way that was very. It wasn't like jackass at the house or anything, but it was just like I think it showed them that you can push the boundaries a lot without a lot of damage, and that's where some of the more interesting stuff happens anyway. And so it's
Love it. And then my final question is, I've for the longest time I've told people that my life's work, my Mona Lisa, has been my career, and has been my what I created at Penji, right? That's just been it. You have a business, and it seems like you have a very set of a guide, something that has been guiding you. And so I'd be curious to see, like, once Hunter is either sold, purchased, acquired, or you just don't feel like doing it anymore, what is the impact that you would hope for your career and Hunter to leave on this earth?
proud to say I don't think about that a lot, because I think it's healthier to be in the moment and try to live that way as much
Well,
as
I
I
asked
can.
that question simply because it seems like you have a guiding set of principles that you want to bring value to people. So I kind of just asked that question based on how you were answering some of the questions, because I
Yeah,
assumed that maybe there was a significant thought in that aspect. But if you're telling me no, that's okay too, right? But I would say that you might, you alluded to it a lot in the conversation, that you are thinking about those things. So I'm just curious, like, what does that impact, or what does that value that you believe Hunter brings to small businesses?
I grew up around a lot of small businesses, and I enjoyed chatting with small business owners. But one thing that became really clear to me very obvious or very early was how painful being a small business owner can be. How isolating, how lonely, how you feel like you're fighting against the world because you've got bigger competitors that everybody seems to want to support. And it just, I don't know, it got imprinted on me really early that if you're a big company, it's a little bit like being a really, really attractive person. Opportunities just seem to manifest, right? You know, it's like you're a big company and oh, you want to be bigger? Oh, hey, you want to raise money? We'll make that easier. And so it was like everywhere I went, it felt like there was a huge advantage to being a big company, but everybody I talked to that worked in big companies kind of hated it. And I thought, if I can continue to bring concepts, technology, whatever, user interfaces, user experience, if I can bring things to smaller businesses to help them be successful, to fight against the bigger opportunities, basically, if somebody can represent for them the way it seems so easy for people to represent for big companies, if I can try to bridge that gap or try to even the balance a bit, that would be really meaningful to me, because I feel like it's a little bit fighting for somebody who people don't fight for often enough. And my wife is a small business owner. I get to see this up close. I feel like at every turn, people are trying to figure out how they can squeeze another dollar out of small businesses. And I don't know, I get to wake up every day and make sure that it's not me. And I get to make sure that it's not Hunter. And that feels good. And I get to lead a bunch of people to do a creative task, which is building a thing that currently doesn't exist but will tomorrow, and like take this product and make it accessible to them. Yeah, it's I hope that's what my team gets, is like, look, to be clear, none of this happens without them. I think it starts with hiring the right people and building a culture where they feel like they're valued, they care about what they do, and it's not the end of the world. That it's like, this is a thing, let's build it for these people, let's bring value to their lives, let's make their lives easier, and let's have some fun and be creative while we're doing it. And that, if I can just continue to have as many people affected by that culture as possible, I'll feel really good about it.
Well said, Matt. Thank you so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Thanks.